Have you ever noticed how some people remain calm no matter what is happening around them? They don't rush, they don't spiral, they don't collapse under uncertainty. They move slowly, speak clearly, and somehow stay grounded even when life feels unstable. Now compare that to what happens inside you when pressure appears, when something is uncertain, when something is delayed, when you don't have control. Do you feel steady, or do you feel that familiar tension rise in your chest, that urgency in your mind, that restless feeling that won't let you settle? Most people think anxiety is caused by life, deadlines, relationships, money, health, the future. But the deeper truth is that anxiety is often not created by the situation itself. Anxiety is created by your inner system's relationship with uncertainty. It is what happens when your nervous system stops feeling safe, even when nothing is actively threatening you. That is not weakness, that is conditioning. At some point, your system learned that being calm was risky, that relaxing meant losing control, and that staying alert was the only way to survive. And once that pattern is formed, it repeats automatically. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Anxiety is often unconscious protection. It is your mind trying to keep you safe using outdated strategies. And the more you fight it, the more you reinforce the idea that something is wrong, that danger is near, that you should stay on guard. This lesson is not about becoming fearless. It is about becoming regulated. It is about teaching your body and mind to feel safe again from the inside. Anxiety is not the same thing as fear. This matters because when you misunderstand what anxiety is, you try to solve it the wrong way. You try to think your way out of it. You try to force calm. You try to distract yourself. You try to eliminate every uncomfortable feeling. And when those strategies fail, you assume something is wrong with you. But the problem is not you. The problem is that anxiety is being treated like a moral weakness instead of what it actually is, a nervous system response. Fear has an object. It is specific and immediate. You can point to the thing that caused it, a sudden noise, a threat in your environment, a situation that requires action. Fear rises, you respond, and once the threat passes, the body slowly returns to baseline. Fear is connected to something real. It has a beginning and an end. Anxiety is different. Anxiety doesn't require a clear object. Anxiety lives in possibility. It is the body preparing for something that has not happened yet. It is not danger, but almost danger. Almost bad news. Almost failure. Almost rejection. Almost loss. Almost disaster. Anxiety is your system rehearsing pain in advance because it believes that preparation will prevent suffering. It assumes that if you can anticipate every outcome, you can avoid being surprised. And if you avoid being surprised, you can avoid being hurt. This is why anxiety often feels like it is running in the background. Even when nothing is actually wrong, it's not reacting to the present moment. It's reacting to what your mind can imagine. The anxious mind doesn't ask, what is happening? It asks, what could happen? And because the future can contain anything, the mind becomes addicted to scanning. It searches for certainty in a world that cannot provide it. When anxiety is active, your system shifts into survival mode. Your attention narrows, not because you are choosing to focus, but because your body believes focus is necessary for survival. Your thinking becomes urgent. Your body tenses. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your heart rate may increase. Your thoughts speed up. You become hyper-aware of potential problems, and once the system is activated, the mind starts doing what it thinks it must do. It begins searching for the threat. This is where the what if questions come from. What if I fail? What if they leave? What if something goes wrong? What if I embarrass myself? What if I can't handle it? These questions are not curiosity. They are fear trying to disguise itself as responsibility, because the mind would rather worry than admit it cannot predict the future. Worry feels like control. Worry feels like preparation. Worry feels like effort, and effort feels safer than surrendering to uncertainty. But the more you worry, the more your system learns that there is something to worry about. That's the loop. The body activates and produces tension. The mind interprets that tension as evidence that something is wrong. The mind searches for an explanation. It finds a possible threat. That threat intensifies the body's activation. The increased activation makes the mind search harder, and the cycle repeats. The loop becomes stronger, not because life is more dangerous, but because your system has learned to treat inner activation as a warning sign. Over time, this can make your world feel smaller. The range of things that trigger anxiety expands. You start feeling it before meetings, before messages, before decisions, before waiting, before silence. Even normal experiences start to feel like threats. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A small mistake feels like disaster. A quiet day feels uneasy, not because those situations are objectively dangerous, but because your nervous system has become sensitized. It has learned to respond too strongly, too quickly, too often. And here is the most important reframe. Anxiety is not a sign that you're weak. It's not proof that you're broken. It's not a character flaw. Anxiety is protection. It is a misguided form of care from the survival part of your brain. It thinks that worry is responsibility. It thinks that vigilance is maturity. It thinks that tension is preparation. It believes that if it relaxes, you will be harmed. So it keeps you alert. The tragedy is that this protection becomes the very thing that drains you. It steals your energy. It steals your focus. It steals your peace. It makes you live in rehearsal instead of reality. It makes you fight battles that haven't even arrived yet, and it convinces you that you're being smart for doing it. But the truth is, chronic anxiety is not intelligence. It is conditioning, and the reason this is good news is simple. Conditioning can change. Your nervous system is not fixed. It adapts. It learns. It updates its expectations based on what you repeatedly show it. If you repeatedly show it that uncertainty is survivable, that discomfort passes, that you can remain present without being consumed, your system begins to soften. It begins to trust. It begins to stand down. Silencing anxiety is not about forcing yourself to feel calm. It is about teaching your body what safety feels like again. And once you understand what anxiety really is, you stop seeing it as a monster. You start seeing it as a system. And when something becomes a system, it becomes workable. Most people believe anxiety comes from outside, from work, from relationships, from money, from uncertainty, from pressure, but that is only the surface. The real source of anxiety is not what is happening to you. It is what your nervous system has learned to expect. Your body is not reacting to the present. It is reacting to memory, to patterns, to emotional history. Long before you became aware of it, your system learned one rule: stay alert. Something can go wrong at any moment. And once that rule is installed, it becomes automatic. You no longer choose it, it chooses you. For many people, this began early. Maybe you grew up in an environment where moods changed without warning, where love was inconsistent, where mistakes were punished, where silence meant danger, where tension filled the room, where you had to read emotions just to survive. So you adapted. You became sensitive. You became observant. You became careful. You became alert. You learned to scan, not because you were weak, because you were intelligent. You learned that safety depended on awareness. But what protected you then is hurting you now. That same vigilance never turned off. It followed you into adulthood, into your relationships, into your career, into your thoughts, into your sleep. Your body never learned that the war was over. So it stayed in combat mode, even when nothing was happening. And maybe it didn't start in childhood. Maybe it started later, after betrayal, after loss, after humiliation, after burnout, after failure, after being overwhelmed one too many times. Moments when you felt powerless, moments when you thought, I can't go through that again. So your system made a promise. Never again. I will stay ready. I will never be caught off guard. I will never relax completely. And from that moment on, peace became suspicious. Silence became dangerous. Calm felt wrong, because calm meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. So you stayed tense. You stayed prepared. You stayed guarded. Another hidden cause is your addiction to control. No one talks about this. But many anxious people are control addicts. They need to know. They need to plan. They need to predict. They need to prepare. They need to eliminate uncertainty. Because uncertainty feels like death. Not physically, psychologically. Uncertainty means, I don't know if I'll be okay. And that terrifies the survival brain. So it tries to dominate the future. It runs simulations. It builds scenarios. It imagines disasters. It overthinks every outcome. It calls this responsibility, but it is fear. Control is not strength. It is armor, and armor is heavy. It exhausts you. Now consider something darker. Your nervous system is constantly watching how you treat yourself. Every time you ignore your limits, every time you overwork, every time you stay in draining environments, every time you suppress your needs, every time you tolerate disrespect, every time you abandon your body's signals, your system records it, and it learns, this person does not protect me, so I must protect myself by becoming anxious, by becoming tense, by becoming hypervigilant. Anxiety is often the body saying, I don't trust you to keep me safe, so I will do it myself. And that is tragic, because you are fighting your own protector. Another reason your system doesn't feel safe is unresolved stress. Modern life never completes stress cycles. You go from pressure to pressure, from task to task, from demand to demand. No real recovery, no real release, no real reset. Your system never returns to baseline. It lives in low-grade emergency mode all the time. So even small things feel overwhelming. A message, a delay, a decision, a conversation, they become threats because your system is already overloaded. And then there is emotional suppression. Many anxious people learned early, don't feel too much. Don't show weakness. Don't burden others. Don't complain. Don't fall apart. So they swallowed everything. Fear, anger, sadness, grief, disappointment. They pushed it down, and the body never forgot. Suppressed emotion does not disappear. It becomes tension. It becomes anxiety. It becomes restlessness. It becomes unease. Your body holds what your mind refuses to feel. Now understand this. Your nervous system is not your enemy. It is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it learned. It is trying to keep you alive emotionally, but it is using outdated information. It is protecting you from ghosts, from old wounds, from past threats, from imagined futures. It is fighting battles that no longer exist, and it is exhausting you in the process. The reason you don't feel safe is not because the world is dangerous. It is because your system does not yet trust that you can handle it. It does not trust uncertainty. It does not trust discomfort. It does not trust emotional pain. It does not trust recovery. So it stays alert always. But this can change, because systems learn. And when you begin showing your body that you are present, that you can regulate, that you can survive discomfort, that you can protect your energy, that you will not abandon yourself, it begins to relax, not immediately, not magically, but gradually. And that is how real safety is rebuilt, from the inside. Most people believe that they are in control of their thoughts. They believe that what appears in their mind is a conscious choice, something they decide to think, something they are responsible for creating. But if you observe yourself honestly, you will notice something uncomfortable. Most of your thoughts arrive without permission. They appear suddenly. They interrupt. They repeat. They insist. And once they appear, they begin shaping your emotional state before you even realize what is happening. Anxious thoughts are especially powerful because they do not present themselves as opinions. They present themselves as warnings. They speak in the language of urgency and necessity. They say, "Pay attention to this. This is important. This could be dangerous." And because your nervous system is already sensitive, you obey. You follow the thought. You enter the scenario. You begin rehearsing the future. You begin negotiating with outcomes that do not exist. And within seconds, your body is reacting as if something real is happening. What makes this process dangerous is that it happens automatically. You do not choose to worry. You notice that you are already worrying. You do not decide to panic. You realize that panic has already taken over your body. You do not consciously choose to replay conversations or imagine disasters. You discover that your mind has been doing it for hours without your awareness. And when this continues for years, you begin to believe that this is simply who you are. You begin to think, "I am an anxious person. I am an overthinker. This is my personality." But this is not your personality. This is conditioning. The illusion that anxiety depends on is the illusion of control. Anxious thinking convinces you that if you analyze enough, prepare enough, imagine enough, and worry enough, you will eventually reach certainty. It promises that one more thought, one more scenario, one more calculation will finally make you feel safe. But that moment never comes, because the future cannot be mastered through thought, and every attempt to control it only deepens your dependence on mental rehearsal. This is why anxious people often feel mentally exhausted, even when they have done nothing physically demanding. Their minds have been running simulations all day. They have been negotiating imaginary disasters. They have been managing hypothetical problems. They have been trying to outthink uncertainty. And the nervous system pays the price. The observer emerges when you begin to notice this mechanism instead of obeying it. You start seeing that anxiety is not a message from reality, but a pattern inside your mind. You notice how certain thoughts always appear together, how one worry leads to another, how specific themes repeat, how the same fears return in different disguises. When you see this clearly, something shifts. You stop relating to every thought as if it were urgent truth. You begin to see it as psychological weather. Carl Jung warned that until unconscious patterns are made conscious, they rule your life from behind the scenes. Anxiety thrives in this hidden territory. It operates in darkness. It works best when you believe it is you. But when you observe it, when you recognize its rhythm and its language, it loses authority. It becomes something you experience, not something you are. However, becoming an observer is not comfortable. It requires you to sit with uncertainty without immediately trying to resolve it. It requires you to feel tension without escaping it. It requires you to tolerate ambiguity without drowning it in analysis. This feels dangerous at first because you have trained your mind to believe that constant thinking equals safety. So when you stop reacting, your system panics. It interprets your calm as negligence. It whispers, "You are being irresponsible. You are letting your guard down. Something bad will happen." And this is the moment where most people return to worry, not because worry helps, but because worry feels familiar. The observer chooses differently. The observer understands that not every thought deserves engagement. Not every fear deserves negotiation. Not every scenario deserves rehearsal. Some thoughts exist only to test whether you are still afraid, and when you refuse to engage, they fade. Not immediately, but gradually, because they are no longer rewarded with attention. There is another uncomfortable truth here. Anxiety often becomes part of identity. It becomes a way of relating to the world. Some people feel empty without it. They feel strange when they are calm. They feel unprotected without constant vigilance. So even when peace appears, they unconsciously sabotage it. They search for problems. They reopen old worries. They create mental noise because silence feels unsafe. The observer recognizes this addiction to mental chaos and begins to dismantle it. This is where real power develops, not the power to dominate circumstances, but the power to remain centered inside them. You stop being pulled into every emotional storm. You stop being hypnotized by every prediction. You stop surrendering your nervous system to every passing thought. You become someone who can witness fear without becoming it. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You learn to respond instead of react. You learn to act when action is necessary and remain still when it is not. You learn that true control is not controlling the future, but controlling your relationship with uncertainty. And when this relationship changes, anxiety begins to lose its central position in your life. It no longer defines your identity. It no longer dictates your behavior. It no longer dominates your attention. It becomes one experience among many, not the lens through which you see everything. That is what the observer gives you, not the absence of fear, but sovereignty over it. Most people try to silence anxiety in the mind. They analyze it. They question it. They argue with it. They search for explanations. They consume endless content about psychology and self-help. They hope that if they understand enough, the fear will disappear. But the truth is more disturbing. Anxiety does not begin in the mind. It begins in the body. And as long as the body remains in a state of alert, the mind will continue to produce fear. Your nervous system is older than your logic. It does not speak in language. It speaks in sensation, in tension, in breath, in posture, in rhythm. And it constantly sends signals to the brain about whether you are safe or endangered. When your body is tight, shallow, restless, and rigid, The brain receives one message: something is wrong. It does not matter how positive your thoughts are. The body will override them. Look at yourself when you are anxious. Your jaw tightens. Your shoulders rise. Your stomach contracts. Your hands clench. Your breath becomes shallow. Your chest feels compressed. Your eyes scan. Your posture collapses inward or becomes rigid. This is not accidental. This is your system preparing for threat. It is putting on armor. And once the armor is on, your mind follows. It begins searching for reasons to justify the tension. This is why many people feel anxious for no reason. The reason is already in their muscles. What makes this worse is that most people live in chronic tension without realizing it. They wake up tense. They work tense. They eat tense. They scroll tense. They sleep tense. Their bodies never fully release. So tension becomes normal. And when tension becomes normal, peace feels unfamiliar. It feels unsafe. It feels suspicious. The nervous system interprets relaxation as loss of control. This is why anxious people often feel uncomfortable when things finally slow down, when there is silence, when there is nothing urgent, when there is no crisis. Instead of relief, they feel restless, uneasy, exposed, as if something is missing. What is missing is hypervigilance, and without it, they feel defenseless. Your body has learned that tension equals survival, so it holds on. Breathing is the most direct way into this system, but most people use it incorrectly. They treat breathing as a technique, something to do once or twice when they are overwhelmed. But breathing is communication. Every breath tells your nervous system a story. Short, shallow breaths say, "We are in danger." Long, slow exhales say, "We are safe." When you breathe anxiously all day, you are constantly whispering fear to your brain. The exhale is especially important. It activates the part of the nervous system responsible for calming. When you shorten your exhale, you suppress that signal. When you lengthen it, you restore it. This is not philosophy. It is biology. And most anxious people unknowingly sabotage themselves by breathing in a way that keeps their system activated. Posture also speaks. A collapsed body tells the brain, "I am overwhelmed." A rigid body tells the brain, "I am under threat." A grounded body tells the brain, "I am present." When you sit hunched, tense, and compressed for hours, your nervous system interprets it as submission to stress. It adapts accordingly. Movement is another neglected language. Anxiety is stored energy. It is activation that has nowhere to go. When you remain still while anxious, that energy turns inward. It becomes pressure. It becomes rumination. It becomes agitation. Gentle movement discharges it. Walking, stretching, slow physical activity. These are not distractions. They are completion signals. They tell the body the stress cycle has ended. Attention also regulates the body. When your attention is trapped in imagined futures, your body reacts as if those futures are real. When you bring attention into sensory reality, into sound, texture, temperature, and weight, you anchor the system in the present. The present is usually safe. Anxiety survives in imagined time. Another powerful but uncomfortable tool is naming. When you label what is happening in your body, you take away its mystery. This is tension. This is adrenaline. This is activation. Mystery amplifies fear. Clarity weakens it. The nervous system fears what it does not understand. When you understand your own sensations, they lose authority. But perhaps the most important practice is how you relate to discomfort. Most anxious people treat discomfort as an emergency. They rush to eliminate it, distract it, escape it, numb it, suppress it. And every time they do this, they teach their system that discomfort is dangerous. So next time, the system reacts faster and stronger when you learn to stay present with mild discomfort without panic, without escape, without judgment. Something radical happens. Your nervous system updates. It learns this sensation is tolerable. I do not need to alarm. I can survive this. And with repetition, the alarm grows quieter. Your body is not asking you to destroy anxiety. It is asking you to listen, to slow down, to soften, to ground, to stop living as if you are constantly under attack. Because when your body finally believes that the war is over, the mind will follow. And that is when silence becomes possible. Most people do not remain anxious because they are incapable of change. They remain anxious because they unknowingly protect their anxiety. They organize their lives around it. They adapt to it. They build routines, habits, and identities that revolve around managing fear instead of dissolving it. Over time, anxiety stops feeling like a problem and starts feeling like a companion, a familiar presence, a background voice that never leaves, and anything that has been present for long enough begins to feel like part of the self. This is why many people secretly fear letting go of anxiety, not consciously, but psychologically, because anxiety has become their warning system, their motivator, their excuse, their justification. It explains why they hesitate, why they overthink, why they avoid, why they delay, why they stay small. Without anxiety, they would be forced to confront something more frightening, their own responsibility for how they live. Anxiety often functions as emotional armor. It creates the illusion that you are preparing for life, when in reality, you are postponing it. You feel busy inside, constantly processing, analyzing, and worrying, but very little changes outside. You mistake mental activity for progress. You confuse vigilance with wisdom. You confuse exhaustion with effort. And the nervous system learns from this. It learns that fear is rewarded with attention, that worry leads to delay, that discomfort leads to retreat, that uncertainty leads to paralysis. So it keeps producing anxiety, because anxiety works. It keeps you inside familiar boundaries. It keeps you from risking. It keeps you from confronting uncomfortable truths. It keeps you predictable. Avoidance is one of the main pillars of this cycle. Every time you avoid something that makes you anxious, your system experiences temporary relief. That relief feels like safety. The brain registers it as success. We escaped. Good. Do that again. But what you really taught your system is that the situation was dangerous. So next time, the fear is stronger. The resistance is higher. The story is darker. The walls close in. Reassurance seeking works the same way. When you constantly look to others to calm you, to confirm that nothing is wrong, to guarantee outcomes, you teach your nervous system that it cannot cope alone. You create dependency. You outsource stability. And when reassurance fades, as it always does, anxiety returns more aggressively, demanding another dose. This is how people become trapped, not by trauma alone, by habits, by repetition, by unconscious loyalty to fear. Breaking this cycle requires something most people avoid: emotional discipline, not harshness, not suppression, not denial, discipline. The ability to feel discomfort without obeying it. The ability to tolerate uncertainty without collapsing. The ability to pause between impulse and action. The ability to stay present when your mind is screaming for escape. This is where inner authority is born. Inner authority means you no longer let fear dictate your behavior. You listen to it, but you do not surrender to it. You acknowledge it, but you do not worship it. You treat it as information, not command. You begin making decisions based on values, not moods. You act even when anxious. You rest even when guilty. You say no even when afraid. You move forward even when uncertain. And every time you do this, your nervous system updates its model of reality. It learns, we survived. We were uncomfortable and nothing collapsed. We did not need to panic. We did not need to escape. These experiences accumulate. They become evidence. They weaken fear. Another essential shift is learning to live with uncertainty. Most anxious people believe peace will come when they finally know everything, when all risks are eliminated, when all outcomes are guaranteed. But that day never arrives. Life does not offer certainty. It offers participation. The only real safety is self-trust, the belief, whatever happens, I can respond. This belief cannot be thought into existence. It is built through experience, through facing discomfort, through staying present, through recovering, through learning that you are stronger than your imagination suggests. Your lifestyle also becomes part of this transformation. A dysregulated life creates a dysregulated mind. Poor sleep, constant stimulation, emotional overload, unstable routines, and digital addiction keep your nervous system in chaos. You cannot heal anxiety while living in permanent stress. Calm requires structure, not rigidity. Structure, predictable rhythms, protected recovery, intentional rest, meaningful focus. These are not luxuries, they are foundations. Another crucial element is how you relate to your own boundaries. Many anxious people betray themselves daily. They overcommit, they overgive, they overextend, they tolerate what drains them. They remain in environments that destabilize them, and then they wonder why their nervous system feels unsafe. Safety grows when you prove to yourself that you will protect your energy, that you will leave what harms you, that you will say no when necessary, that you will choose peace over approval. Over time, something profound begins to happen. Your mind slows, your reactions soften, your attention stabilizes, your confidence grows quietly, not because you became fearless, but because you became grounded. You stop living in anticipation of catastrophe. You stop rehearsing disaster. You stop treating every sensation as a warning sign. You stop confusing anxiety with intuition. You start trusting your capacity. And when that happens, anxiety no longer needs to dominate you. It loses its role. It loses its authority. It becomes background noise instead of central command. You are no longer ruled by what might happen. You are guided by what matters. This is the return of inner sovereignty, the moment you realize that peace is not something you wait for. It is something you build every day, through awareness, through discipline, through self-respect, through courage. And once that foundation is laid, silence is no longer empty. It is strong. It is stable. It is yours. If you are ready to choose yourself, write in the comments, I choose calm, not for me, for you. Let it be a commitment. Let it be a reminder. Let it be a declaration that you are no longer living in constant rehearsal. And if this lesson helped you see yourself more clearly, subscribe to Observer's Wisdom, because this channel is not about quick fixes. It is about rebuilding your relationship with your own mind. And if you are ready for that journey, you are in the right place. Stay grounded, stay present, and I'll see you in the next lesson.